Hello and welcome to yet another live stream of Mad About Sports. And of course, today we are here to talk about the UEFA Champions League as the semi-final is set now and the teams are finally ready. It's going to be a very interesting matchup or tie-up into the semi-final. As you all know, it's going to be a Milan derby on one end, and you are going to have also Real Madrid take on Manchester City. A very similar fixture as to what you saw the last season when these two teams faced in a semi-final last year. But here on, we are going to see an exciting one as well. You know, it went down the wire. It was Real Madrid's magical comeback, which took them to the final and which made them eventually win that 14 title. So one end, you have Manchester City, who's on the quest for their first ever Champions League title. Real Madrid wanting to defend their crown and to get their 15th title, and Inter Milan, who wants to win their fourth title and possibly their first ever final since 2010. And on the other end, you have AC Milan, who's in the final, who's possibly wanting to get into a final since 2007, where they finally went on to win that match of the final against Liverpool in 2007. So Liverpool, so for AC Milan, of course, if they would want to get into that final, they will of course have not good memories in Istanbul for sure from what happened in 2004 after what 2005 after what happened with Liverpool in that final. And for Inter Milan, of course, this is a massive game. But let's look at the lead up, right? Both the teams have had a phenomenal lead up into the semi-finals. If you look at the start of the fixtures, they were coming up against Napoli and Benfica. If we talk about the Milan sides of things, let's start off by talking about them because it's the most exciting one to start off with. Now, Inter Milan was tied up against Benfica, who was undefeated in the tournament as well, leading into that game. And AC Milan was tied up against Napoli, who are the Serie A leaders at this point of stage and who have been one of the best team in Europe, you can say so. Let's look at the fixtures first. As you all know, it's of course the Milan derby to start off with, and of course you have Manchester City, Real Madrid. But before that, we have to talk about the first game which we have in hand over here, which is the AC Milan versus Inter Milan tie. When we look into these two teams, one end you have the second most successful team in Champions League history. It is none other than AC Milan. They've had a phenomenal time in Champions League. If you look at the previous records, they've always been there, out there winning titles, and they were a consistent name in the European circuit. But now, in the recent past, over the last one decade, they've definitely fallen apart. Now, if you look on the other side of things, you have Inter Milan, who have had a phenomenal time, especially in Serie A in recent past, but they've not really converted that into the European circuit for sure. Now, let's look at the previous two meetings. They met once in 2002-3, where it was in the semi-final of the Champions League. That's the last time they met in the semi-final. And 2004-5, where they met in the quarterfinal of the Champions League, where eventually AC Milan went on to play the final of that time. But if you look, there's a common factor. Inter Milan has never been able to get one past AC Milan. But you also have to take in regard the AC Milan of 2002 to 2007, that glorious period of AC Milan where they had some of the biggest stars out there. They had Shevchenko, they had Kaká, they had Sidorf, they had Dida there in the back line, they had Maldini playing for them. So it was, you can say, that was the most generational talents who were playing in one particular team, in that Milan team in 2002 to 2007. For Inter, it was always post 2007 where they started to really get grip of things when Mourinho took over, when they went on to win treble in Serie in European football under Mourinho in 2010, where they went on to win the Champions League, the Italian Cup, and also the Serie A. So that's been their trajectory in terms of their progress. In the recent past, if you look, the only Italian team to really make it to the semi-final of the Champions League in recent past was in 2018 when Roma made it after defeating Barcelona in the quarterfinal. It was, you can say, one of the most wonderful ones in the recent past in the history of Champions League as well, when an Italian team made. Now, for a lot of reasons, if you look historically, these two teams have always been cool. Now, this particular match is going to be played in San Siro, right? Both the legs are going to be played in San Siro. So the fans, the atmosphere, we've always seen some of the most iconic pictures. And now, if I have to pull out one picture, it is that picture of Materazzi standing with Gattuso, and we're just looking at the flares. The last time when these two teams met in the quarterfinal, remember, Dida got hit by flares. The entire stadium was lit up with a lot of flares as well. So things weren't really, looking very pleasant before the start of the match. But yes, that is the rivalry. The city will be divided into two halves. One half will definitely support the bluer side of things, and the other half will support the red side of things. That's why this is the most intriguing semi-final one can ever imagine, and it's going to be very interesting as well for a lot of reasons. Number one, you have to talk about the reason why just under Inzaghi. Now, if you look at that particular list, you see one particular person, it is Filippo Inzaghi, and now he's the manager of the opposition team as well. So he will have a thing or two to definitely have some bit of stake, but as Inter Milan manager this time. But if you look in historical ties as well, if you look at AC Milan in the recent past, after being the defending champions of the Serie A, they've continued that run into European football. Can you ever say that AC Milan are one of the best teams at this point going in Europe? Definitely not, because all the odds were against them to go into that tie against Napoli, because Napoli were that force to reckon with, right? You would talk about someone like Osimhen, you talk about Kvaratskhelia, and you talk about different other factors as well. So I'll come to this question, career counselor, what happened to Real in UCL versus La Liga. Yeah, I will come to that because that's very interesting as well. But before that, let's look into Benfica also intro game, because it's very interesting to talk about it. Number one, an interesting game. A lot of people did not really care, did not really give that chance to Benfica after that first leg where they went on defeat Benfica in their home turf. And it was one of the toughest things, because if you're defeating Benfica there, you definitely know that you are on top of the game. And you have to say, Nico Barella, what a phenomenal player he has turned out to be for them. His two goals in both the legs was a decisive factor ultimately, if you look in the larger scheme of things. He scored a brilliant goal in the second leg as well. He absolutely turned around the keeper, and he scored that curler. You have to say that was the iconic point. Though Benfica had a late surge where they tried to come back into the game with two late goals, by then it was way too late. If you look at the AC Milan game on the other end of the side, you have to say they were extremely unlucky. The Napoli side as well. Koicha Kvaratskhelia missing that penalty in the 83rd minute, and Osimhen finally did score for them, but that was not good enough ultimately if you look into the larger scheme of things. Now, if you talk about this, you have to say that Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, there's a lot of pressure on him, especially leading into this game. He did not have the best of first legs. If you have to talk about his trajectory, his progress as well, one of the best players in Europe this circuit. A lot of bigger clubs are looking at him. If you have to talk about the next season as well. Now, for him to take the penalty, was it the right choice when Osimhen was there in the ground? Definitely, that's questionable, because remember, this is first ever Champions League, and he's not the most designated penalty taker for Napoli at that stage. And even for AC Milan, there was Olivier Giroud who missed that penalty, but they should have absolutely capitalized. These are the moments which you talk about. That's why I'll come to career counselors. The question on how Real Madrid capitalizes on these moments in Champions League. It is about these small moments which make a larger difference in the larger scheme of things as well. But you have to say, Maignan has had a phenomenal tournament as a keeper, and you have to say also the back line of AC Milan, they really stepped up. Likes of you have to say Simon Kjaer was a leading person over there, and you have to give credit to someone like a Rafael Leo. What a phenomenal season he's been having as a left winger. I know after this good season, already he's had a good season last year when he helped AC Milan to win the Serie A. But now with the season which he's had, you have to be believing that some of the bigger clubs will be in hunt for someone like Rafael Leao. He's played exceptional football. His pace to break out, his technical ability to dribble past defenders and to get inside the box and make the right judgments. It's so important to make the final judgments, isn't it? You might have the technical ability with the pace, with all the skills, but that final judgment, that excellent pass which he passed to Giroud was one of the key differentiator in that entire tie if you look right now. So you have to say AC Milan is rightly on top of the game. In second leg, definitely they were sitting way back. They wanted to play a defensive style of football, and it did work well for them. They really did frustrate Napoli by a big margin. Even if you look in the last 30 days, they defeated Napoli 3 times. They defeated Napoli 2 times, and one of the occasion was a draw in the last leg. But defeating Napoli 4-0 in Serie A would have bolstered their confidence a long way. These small wins, you might say Napoli was not playing at their best. There was definitely no Osimhen in that game. But that made them believe, going to Naples and defeating Napoli in their home ground in Serie A 4-0. Now, that really made them believe that they can have a chance in the Champions League. And that's exactly what happened. When the world was definitely split on opinions as to who can go out in the semi-final, everybody had Napoli in the final. But, Champions League and knockout football is such a funny thing, because funny things happen there, and extremely funny things happen because of this historical legacy as well. AC Milan, when they look back into the legacy of the club as well, it does come into play when you look for inspirations. You have to say someone like Maldini was in attendance in both the legs. These kind of presence, when you have such big figures in your team, such big figures in your dressing room, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic has been a mighty motivating factor for this team as well in the dressing room, always pumping the team around, making them believe this. It's a good squad, to be honest. It's got a good fine mixture of youngsters and also experienced players. That's what has made them really have a good run in Serie A last time around, and now deep into the Champions League as well. Now, who holds the better advantage leading into this? Like, if we talk about Inter Milan on one side, you have to say they've been playing some good football. They've been really making themselves believe. They played some excellent football in terms of them trying to shift the gear, especially in triggers. They've been able to press the opposition, especially Benfica at home. They've been able to do a phenomenal job. And now Lautaro Martinez finding a scoring boost is going to give them give them a lot of confidence. Look at the midfield, right? They've got Barella, they've got someone like a Brozovic out there. They've, you have to say Çalhanoğlu has had a very underrated season for a lot of reasons. From the time he played that he put up a performance against Barcelona in the group stage, you have to say his trajectory has been on an upward climb, and he's had a very underrated season. On the right hand side, they've had Dumfries, who has been putting in an effort. You have to say on goal as well. They've had a good time, and especially that defensive compactness of Skriniar, something like a De Vrij, everybody coming in together, putting in that extra bit of shift has really helped and lay that impetus and make this team believe that yes, we can go out there and compete against large, bigger teams. Look at the run. They defeated Porto and they had a good run. They defeated someone like a Benfica. Now you can say they're not yet tested. The only test they had in the Champions League was against Bayern Munich earlier on in the group stage, and they did fail that test. But now it's a different ball game altogether. It's knockout football. You're facing your arch rivals in your home in San Siro. The crowd is going to be behind you. There's a lot of things to play. Everything is at stake in this particular game. So that is where things are going to take a different turn. Let's take some questions before we go in. So we have had Pep needs to win this time to come close to being a GOAT. Real winning again. Okay, MUFC the Red Devils, NCR has asked. Reds winning again. So Real Madrid winning again, right? You have to say Real Madrid are the favorites. If you look in all these four teams, and I'll give you an interesting trivia. It's the first time ever in a Champions League semi-final, all the three teams are starting with M in their who's got M in their names. You got Manchester, you got Madrid, you got two Milans. So all the four teams with M in their name, and out of these four teams, three teams have been coached by Ancelotti himself. So it's very interesting as they go ahead. But yeah, let's talk about which we have to talk about Real Madrid's great one and what makes them special in Champions League, right? It has to be about capitalizing on these smaller moments. As I mentioned about Kvicha, Kvaratskhelia not capitalizing on these moments. Real Madrid, it makes them believe. It's also got to do a lot with legacy. It's also got to do a lot with experience, like been there, done that. We have seen this situation before. We can close out games. And you have to say, it has also spread on to the youngsters and the next generation of Madrid players. You have to say Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo have all been able to taste success and have been all able to gain some bit of experience playing alongside these lads, right? And these lads have definitely given them that bit of confidence, like Modric, Toni Kroos, Karim Benzema. They have all made them believe that we can win from any position, and that's the push what you want in a dressing room. It's so important. We often talk about skills, we often talk about temperament, but it is that dressing room which ultimately it comes down to. You saw how Bayern Munich fell apart before the second leg, after the first leg, when the dressing room was disjointed. And you could sense that in the performance. Though the crowd was behind them, it was not good enough at the end of the day to really take them past the line. So when you look in larger scheme of things in big tournaments like this, you need the dressing room united as one, playing for each other, making them believe we can win from any position. Last year's Madrid's one is a clear-cut example why history really matters to certain teams, or legacy really matters to certain teams, or situational or experience really matters to certain teams, because they've been there and done it, and that's something that belief really spread across that entire team that they could win from any position in that last season's one. And this season as well, they've not really, really put their foot to rest. They've really gone in an accelerating mode. And you can see in both the legs against Chelsea, they were not even playing in the third gear. They're possibly in the second gear where they were absolutely in a cruise control mode. And that's all what they had to do. They really had to close the game out in the second leg, and they capitalized on the moments. It was not like Real Madrid was completely dominant on the second leg. It is those two moments which really came about and which really made them stand apart. So ultimately, if you look in larger scheme of things, Real Madrid are a team who capitalizes on these smaller moments, and that experience of capitalizing the smaller moments has really made them into the elite club. And if you talk about in the league structure like things, they've been excellent in league in the last 3 to 4 years. But why they've been so successful in Champions League more than any other club is also because of the smaller moments. Sometimes in league, you have to say, things might not go in your way in all 38 games. Some of the games you might have to face draws. You might lose out, especially away from home. You might have to face some tricky fixtures here and there. Injuries will come into play. Fatigue comes into play. That's why that momentum. But in Champions League, that makes them believe that we can capitalize on certain moments and really push hard in the opposition, and that really takes opposition by a storm. Last season, the way in which they really made Manchester City to they blew Manchester City apart in the last 10 minutes of the game. Manchester City had no answer what really took place by when Rodrigo scored those two goals. The Manchester City were like almost there. They had one foot in the final. They almost closed out that game, and then Madrid really turned it around. And it's also the home crowd which makes them believe. In Bernabeu, it's never easy to go out there and win matches in Bernabeu. You've often seen how in Bernabeu things really change very quickly. We have, if I have to go back to 2017, 16, where Ronaldo, you had a dream team. You had Ronaldo up front, you had Benzema, you had Bale, you had someone like Modric, Cruz, and Casemiro in the midfield. That crowd really took them in a lot of these games in tough fixtures. You have to say one of the fixtures in when they went to Paris and when they really struggled there. One of the fixtures against Juventus where things were a little tricky, but then the crowd in Bernabeu really sets them apart, really makes them believe that you can cross the line more often than not, and you can capitalize on these moments. And that's where you have to say it comes down to these moments in these big games, and that's why Madrid are going to be a strong favorite, leading into that particular game against Manchester City, especially in that first leg. If you look at the fixtures once again, I pull the fixtures for you. It's Madrid who will be playing at home in the first leg, and then Manchester City will be playing in Etihad. Now, this is very interesting because Madrid often enjoys playing second leg at home because you have to say they believe, even if they go 2-0 down in a away fixture, they believe that they can come back in that home fixture with mighty power. But especially if you have first leg at home, and if City really decides to play at a higher tempo, then it's going to be very tricky for Madrid, because then they will have to really be at their A game away from home in Etihad, which is going to be again tough because City at this point have really clicked in a good momentum. Because you often talk about the word momentum, and it's a cliche term, but even in certain moments in match we talk about momentum, but in a run of fixtures as well. City are on a high momentum because they've been doing well in Premier League. They're hunting for Premier League, they're hunting for FA Cup, and of course they're hunting for Champions League as well. Now this is where it's going to be very interesting for Manchester City. Are they going to put their complete focus on a Champions League or on the Premier League at this point? They're going to be playing the semi-final of the FA Cup against Sheffield United. Then they'll be playing a do-or-die match against Arsenal on the weekend. Then they go into that City fixtures, into the Madrid fixture. So that is where things might be a little interesting, whether players are going to maintain the same amount of intensity and tempo going into the Madrid fixture, or they're going to say, okay, let's slip away the Premier League and FA Cup, and let's just put the complete focus on the Champions League, because that's one trophy which has been haunting us for the longest period of time. And if you look, even Erling Haaland has come out there and stating that I've been bought just to win the Champions League. So he knows what's the message from the owners and from the dressing room, from the coach. It is for him to go out there and win that iconic Champions League. And for Manchester City as well, it is going to be coming up to win that Champions League. Let's look at Manchester City. Let's look at Manchester City's game against Bayern Munich, because a very interesting game for a lot of reasons. Number one, you could have said that things could have been either way in that particular game. Because it's often Allianz Arena, it is a very tough fixture for any team to go out there to Bavarian Hills and really compete against Bayern Munich. But as I mentioned, things weren't really going well for Bayern Munich before the fixture and as it went along as well. If you look at this, if you have to say, the XT levels created by Bayern Munich was definitely on the higher side, because they had a lot more of the ball, they had a lot more shots on target. But then you have to say City capitalized on these moments. City did capitalize on some of the big moments in that game, especially you have to say the moment where Haaland got that ball and really converted that. That is what made the difference ultimately in that game as well. But if you look in the larger scheme of things, if Haaland would have scored that penalty as well, City would have been well and comfortable, taking the lead and maybe seeing things through completely, quite comfortably as well. City was all about just staying back. They're not really playing their complete intensity. They were looking to maintain the shape, maintain a proper shape, as so they didn't want to be overly aggressive, to leave a little bit of space behind as well. You saw yesterday as well how Kingsley Coman was really blasting through his pace on the right hand side against Nathan Ake, and also on the left hand side you have someone like Zane. Zane can go through the central regions as well, especially with that extra bit of burst of pace. And that's why City wanted to not take any more risk, slightly stay behind, because they would know what happened against Madrid in the last year was something they would not want to repeat, because they were slightly opened up towards the lateral and trying to be, expansive, and that really backfired. But City would really believe, these kind of fixtures are so important in their run to winning the trophy, because these are the important fixtures, especially closing a game out when you have the lead and trying to make sure you manage the lead very well, not giving it away. And these are so important, so crucial, because in the last 4 to 5 years, City have faced a lot. City have been in the other side more often than not, especially against Tottenham Hotspur, and you have to say against Real Madrid as well. So City will really know how to not, plunder a lead and not let it go away, especially when you are in complete control of the game. So that's certainly a bit of experience which Pep will like to implement as well, and tactically as well. You have to say that tactically as well, Pep has been on top of the game, especially his tactics, as I mentioned in the last video which we did as well. His system of having 3-2-2, 3-2-2-4 has really helped them in a long way. 3-2-2-3 rather has really helped them in a long way, because when you have two holding midfielders in John Stones and Rodri, and that has really helped someone like John Stones to really go upfield at times, or Rodri to go upfield at times, and also when you have two number 10s in De Bruyne and Grealish, who can really show the prowess, especially when you have someone like De Bruyne who can create the play alongside Gundogan, and you have Grealish on the left hand side and you have Bernardo on the right. You have to say, as maybe they're lacking like someone like a wing back out there, but then that's definitely not been the case. Both Bernardo and Grealish have tracked back on occasions to recover the balls and give that defensive support to Nathan Ake and Akanji on either of the flanks as well. And also one thing it has really done is it's also opened up the play in big ways, because it has also helped someone like an Akanji to move forward, and also to make John Stones to drop down as a defender if need be. And that's why the system has been extremely versatile. And you have to say the creating of overloads on the right hand side. You have to say more often than not, you will see City creating a lot of overloads when they're on top of the game on the right hand side, which releases someone like a Haaland as well. If you look in the system, Haaland, if you look from the start of the season to now, Haaland has really dropped a little more deeper as well. Playing in that role where he has really dropped deep to collect the ball, receive the ball from City's end, then start the play, pass it wide to Grealish, and Grealish runs the play from the left hand region into De Bruyne, and De Bruyne to Haaland back again. So that's how they've operated throughout the system. The system has worked in their favor over the last 1 month, and Pep will definitely be knowing that Ancelotti is a master of cracking down any tactician. So Ancelotti will know how to counter the system. So Pep will have to be on his A game, but at the same time not overthink as well. Sometimes the biggest criticism which Pep Guardiola has been getting in the recent past is, as also Prakash Mandal has also said, Pep needs to win this title, so he'll definitely not want to overthink in these kind of occasions. Maybe keep things slightly more simple. Whatever is working in your way, just continue with it, not to tinker around with it a lot more, because a team like Madrid will definitely sense if you're faltering even a slight bit or a tad bit, and that's where they really pounce on as a team. And hopefully, Manchester City will definitely be believing on that side. But for Madrid as well, Benzema will be really, really itching to go himself, because last time when these two teams met, he had a phenomenal game, and alongside Vinicius Junior, who's been on top of the game as well. Let's look at some of the top scorers of the league so far, because when you talk about them, we'll have to really understand if Benzema is there or not, because Benzema so far after the last season has definitely, you can say, have fallen apart slightly considering his injury as well. Haaland is on top of the chart. There is no doubt about it. 48 goals the entire season, has been on phenomenal form, has not faltered for even a single minute in this entire season. That penalty miss came in as a surprise for a lot of people, because nobody saw that coming. Look at Haaland's positioning entirety of the Champions League. He has been a predator inside the box. He gets a chance and really converts it. And you don't give that chances to Manchester City when you have Haaland inside the box. Now, the biggest difference from the last season to this season with Manchester City and Real Madrid is going to be Erling Haaland, because if you remember the first leg which took place in Etihad in the last fixture when these two met in the semi-final of 2021-22 season, was City missing a lot of chances inside the box, with Riyad Mahrez unable to convert, with Phil Foden unable to convert. But now you have someone in high confidence who scored 48 goals the entire season inside the box. And that is where he is going to be a massive player for Manchester City. He's going to be a difference maker as well. Now, we talk about Benzema on the other side of things. You have to talk about Erling Haaland on this side of things, because these two are going to be the difference makers, especially converting those half chances. Because in these kind of fixtures, it comes down to these smaller chances. Who can capitalize on the smaller chances and convert maybe that header which comes out of nowhere, or maybe convert that half chance, put it in the back of the net. And that's what makes a difference ultimately. And that's why Madrid has been so good in Champions League over the years, that converting those half chances, capitalizing on momentum, and capitalizing on understanding this game and controlling the game well as well. Now, you have to talk about Erling Haaland and his possibility of winning a Ballon d'Or as well. If Manchester City go on to win the treble, he's definitely in with a shout to win the Ballon d'Or. You have to say 3 trophies in Europe. Is, of course, his competitor is going to be Leo Messi with that World Cup. But then, if you're going to win a Champions League, a Premier League, and an FA Cup, and by scoring close to 55 to 60 goals a season, you have to say Erling Haaland is definitely in with the shout, and this is possibly going to be one of the most closest Ballon d'Or race in a long time, because you have Messi with the World Cup, Erling Haaland with more than 50 goals and with a treble if he goes on to win it. But at this point, Messi has definitely got the front foot because you have to say that Erling Haaland has still not won any trophy. This could also be a season where Manchester City goes on to win no trophies and Erling Haaland ends up with 55 odd goals. So that's where, Messi might be the clear-cut favorite. But then if Manchester City go on to win 3 out of the 3 trophies or 2 out of the 3 trophies, which include a Champions League, then Erling Haaland is definitely in with the shout and win with a big, big shout because of the fact that he's been consistent over a period of time, consistent over a longer period of time as well. So interesting debate there as to who might go on to win the Ballon d'Or because of the 2 seasons, because of the 2 contrastable seasons both people have had. Now, if you look at this, most goals as a buy-in as well, you have to say Erling Haaland since 2020, he has been in phenomenal form, and you have to every time Dortmund played Bayern, Dortmund eventually went on to lose most of the fixtures, but then you will see one person who will always be on the score sheet. That was always Erling Haaland, and he knew the crowd. The crowd definitely gave him a stick after the penalty miss which he had, but then he was definitely quick to respond to them by scoring that goal and capitalizing on the chance as well. Now, if you talk about Pep Guardiola leading in 100 wins for Manchester City, phenomenal manager once again. He definitely knows it's an important season for him to get that nod ahead and to get that final silverware with Manchester City to be the part of the project and to end the project well. Definitely, he's got a contract extension, but then this is the peak of the past for Manchester City. They've got every player in almost in their prime, and they want to convert this good run. But Real Madrid on the other end is not going to be an easy opposition for them at all, considering various other factors for them. You have to talk about Real Madrid, who are the best team now, who have been historically very good. But let's look at one of the interesting factors, which is the head-to-head. Right, we have to always look into the head-to-head ties because in these fixtures it all comes down to this. If you look interestingly, they met 7 times and teams have been divided. They've got 3 wins each and 2 draws. No, 8 times, and of course they've got 3 wins each and 2 draws, and that's where it's going to be very interesting. You've got Sergio Aguero, who had 12 goals, and Cristiano Ronaldo, who had scored 13 goals as leading goal scorers in this kind of tie. Of course, you see the bottom half of it, 14 titles and no titles. That is a difference maker here, especially in games like this. It comes down to these small things. Even though it could be 4-4 at the end of the both the ties in semi-final, it is about who capitalizes most in their home leg or who capitalizes ultimately in that entire fixture between Manchester City and Real Madrid. Like last time, Manchester City won the first leg, but then Real Madrid went on to really kill the tie in the second leg by winning it 3-1. So if one of the team is going to really falter in their home by not getting the win, then it's going to be definitely a lot of pressure for them to go away and win as well. So starting off with Real Madrid, they would want to get the win at home and to really be on the front foot going into Etihad and close the game out. Once Real Madrid get that lead, they'll really start to believe that they're almost there in the final, because that's the thing with Real Madrid. It's extremely tough to come back against a team like Real Madrid as well, because they know how to manage a game very well. Because especially with the defensive setup, you saw in the game against Chelsea, though Chelsea had created a lot of chances in their first 45 minutes, with Conor Gallagher really pressing up and also N'Golo Kante drifting in wide to put the crosses in. You have to say someone like you have to say Militao was such a big figure right there as a defender, trying to clear everything out. Rudiger played a phenomenal hand there as well when he was substituted in, and Alaba as well. So this is going to be the major difference for Manchester City. If they're going to let a lead slip away, or if they're going to let Madrid take the lead, then they will definitely know how to close a game out completely in a cruise control mode. And Ancelotti is a master of doing it, because after that one final loss which he had in 2005 with AC Milan, he's definitely been a coach who has never liked to lose any final. And you saw he got one up against them the second time around they met in a final in 2007, and since that he has never lost to Liverpool. And that's the way how Ancelotti operates as a manager as well, especially in knockout football and in major occasions like this. Ancelotti prepares his team in a way that you manage the game well and you don't let us lead slip away. The only time he really let that happen was in 2005 in that important final in Istanbul. And Ancelotti will definitely want to go out there and correct his old Istanbul memories, and maybe face his former team in AC Milan in Istanbul once again. It's going to be a fairy tale of a story, because you've got some of the most historical European heritage there. It could be an AC Milan Real Madrid final, where you might have two European royalties clashing against each other. Very long time. You have a team with 14 titles and you have a team with 7 titles, and who's going to get their noses ahead is going to be the very interesting factor there. So Milan derby is the most exuberating one on the cards because of the history involved with it, because of the two city being divided. But Manchester City versus Real Madrid is going to be a top 2 teams in Europe at this point of time, clashing against each other in form. against top players as well. So that is going to be the most tactical battle to watch out for as well. So guys, that's about it from us. If you have any questions, you can put it down right now. Also, we're going to be ending our live stream right now. It's been phenomenal to take all your questions over a period of time. We will be coming live with cricket as well, because a lot of matches have been happening today. Also, you have seen a double header where RCB got the better of it, not because I'm wearing an RCB jersey, but yeah, RCB went on to get their third win in Punjab, against Punjab, and of course, you have another match, okay, Kolkata versus Delhi Capitals in a few minutes time. So we will be coming with an IPL roundup or some of the tactical analysis of some players, or as you already know, we did a tactical analysis on mystery spinner. If you want to really try that out, you can try it out as well. You can check the video out. It's available right now on our channel. And so before we leave, do remember to subscribe to our channel and also follow our Instagram page, so we can keep bringing you all of these contents in the coming days, and we can keep you, hooked on to all these kind of interesting stuff. And also check out our courses. The link is in the description. If you want to be an aspiring cricket analyst or a football analyst, you can check that out. The link is in the bio, so check that out as well. Have a good time, all of you, and take care. And we will be joining you before the Champions League semi-final or right after once it is done. And also remember, the Premier League battle is on, and all the leagues are really getting to an interesting point of stage at this point.